All right, so hey guys, Jeremy here, and you've seen me post in the group before that I had some really awesome success with people and working together their story meshes and call to action for podcasting and also other sources of media and things like that. So I'm actually going to be doing a coaching call for you guys right here in the group with our guest today, Jodine. So introduce yourself real quick.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on. My name is Jodine Bergstrom, and I am from Tioga, North Dakota.
Very cool. It's funny because that's one of those states I've wanted to visit, and I just haven't gotten a chance to get out there yet.
I'm sure it's on the top of your bucket list, I'm sure.
Well, it's funny because we just watched this movie about big sky country in Wyoming, so that's kind of on one of the top parts of our bucket list right now.
Well, as long as we're in the bucket, I guess that's okay, right?
Absolutely. So we had talked a bit about wanting to do story message call to action for your business. So I guess the thing I always like to find out is we like to take it and work it backwards. So if you were to appear on a podcast or something, and I'm saying this first of all, knowing nothing about your business or anything like that, we're just going to take it and work it backwards. So if you were going to appear on a podcast, like what would be the product you would want people to do? Like what would you want them to like take away from you? Like what would the action you want them to take be?
I have an online course in estate planning, and 10 years ago I moved back to my home state to help my parents transition into elder age. And during that time period, I realized that it's a very complex system because there's no one place you can go and gather all the information. And you're just basically piecemealing it put together. And so, yeah, definitely you guys can go out there and you can do it. One, you can take a lot of time doing it, or two, through this course, I have gathered all the information in one place. So when you put your unique estate plan together for your needs, you've got all the information in one place so you can make an educated decision versus just going on the words of what your lawyer will recommend to you or what your accountant will recommend to you or what your investment broker will recommend to you. So this is kind of a biased way of getting educated and being able to, really build a legacy that's going to last for generations.
Got it. So the end product for you would hopefully have somebody buying your course would be what you'd hope for.
That would be the end product. And the other side of that too, more on a personal basis, so that they don't have to endure the struggles and the pain that both my parents did, which they've both passed on now, and what I had to endure.
Okay, cool. So the goal would be the course. So then let's take that to, you mentioned your personal story. So we're actually going to go back to the beginning now. We know where we want to take it. So like, what's that personal story for you? Because the importance in the personal story is we now know you want them to buy the course, which is super, super important. But the personal story helps people to emotionally connect with you and also gives them permission for the next step. So I guess just tell me a little bit about what that personal story looks like for you. And have you been on a podcast before, first of all?
I have not been on a podcast, but I have been on Facebook Lives. I actually host a lot of them for women entrepreneurs. So
okay, cool. So as a guest, the same strategy we're going to work on today would work for you. It's not going to be the same when you're hosting, but when you're working as a guest, it's going to work. So I guess for me then, tell me that personal story that leads you to creating this sort of a product and why you did it.
Sounds great. I appreciate it. And, the big thing is I just want to, make sure that I serve your audience as well with this. But the big part, my experience, like I said, I came back 10 years ago to my home state. I'd moved away for 20 years and had the opportunity to, come back and help them. And I was rather shocked and surprised that they had not put one together. It was in the talking, but nothing had been written down. And both on my dad's side, when my grandfather passed away, it became ugly because the will became missing. And, my dad at 55 years old ended up having to buy, half of the farm.
Wow. That,
he was under the understanding, years prior that it was going to be turned over to him. And, going into debt for $150,000 back then was a lot of money. And so, I was really surprised that they hadn't taken care of their own business, knowing, the full details of how ugly it can be not taking care of that.
Mm.
So that's how it started. Through the process, we did a lot of things right, but there were a few things that, made it very difficult for my parents to enjoy their golden years.
Mm.
And then when you put in greedy siblings or, their children, I spent $20,000 in court fees fighting to keep my parents out of the nursing home, which,
Wow.
they didn't want to go into a nursing home. And when it all boils down, you just cannot fix stupid.
Yeah.
So
very cool.
So my main goal is just to, like I said, educate people and let them know if you've got to have some tough love conversations and tell, your lazy Larry or sassy Sally, this is my property, this is my wishes, this is what I'm going to do, then you need to have them when you're competent. You need to have them when, so that everybody's aware of it, because I think there's a lot of secrecy. Oh, this is my business. But in the end, even though my mom and dad were pretty transparent and we all have the same information, everybody interprets it differently. And They had 6 children. So you had 6 children with 6 different memories of their childhood and what mom and dad were like. And because I was the youngest, I had a different lifestyle than my older siblings because, things had changed by then. And so there was a lot of jealousy, a lot of hatred. And I have one sister that I've spoke to since my dad's funeral, but I have not spoke to any of the others.
So I'm going to stop you real quick just because I want to add some. So in this story portion, I want to add a little bit more context. So the thing that you're going to find is going to really help you with this is you mentioned some particular things that were happening. I would take a look at maybe a quick story that for each of those, because it's not going to come up every time you do an interview, but you mentioned I had this issue with my siblings. So, I'm not going to mention any names here, but this was kind of what happened because you want people to say, oh my gosh, I've had a situation like that. Like you want to go into the feelings. The feelings are really important because you're then getting permission for that next portion. So you mentioned the course is the end result. So I'm guessing the people buying the course would be the kids, right? Like that would be the target.
Not necessarily, because anybody that's got a checking account to 81 and doesn't have an estate plan, that's kind of the hard thing that I have with it's such a blue ocean and everyone needs it, and I need to really hone in on specifically. I've kind of looked at entrepreneurs because they've got new money and I'm concerned about them. I mean, like if you have children and don't have a will, the state can step in and decide who's going to raise your children if both the birth parents die.
Okay,
so
cool. So
I need to really hone that in.
Well, that's fine, though, because the thing I like to tell people is there's different lenses you're going to tell your story to. And that's why it's good for you. It's going to be particularly important to look at each podcast you're going on and saying, well, this is going to be more relevant to, let's say, people over 50, or this is going to be more relevant to people, over 30 or whoever it may be. And you're just going to craft yourself a little bit more to that market based on what you're listening to. So that's totally fine. Like you don't need, this like, oh my God, moment of clarity here. Like you've got the idea and you just kind of tailor it based on what you feel the audience is. So then I guess the question for me would be then like, what is the one to three major things that, if you were on a podcast, you'd be like, you need to know this, this, and this. Like, what are those?
So can I ask a question first?
Sure. Go for it.
So basically before I got onto the podcast, I would need to make sure that I've got the backstory of what your audience is to really know that, so that way you're not wasting time. You can say, because like if you're in a, let's say what is the average viewer for your podcast age?
Average age of my podcast is anywhere from 28 to 40 is around my average age.
Okay.
And that's something that I always, with our clients, tell them is really important to take a look at, is just take a look at, because you're going to see each show, like you're going to have your story, right? And like your story is your story, but you're going to tell it through a different lens depending on what type of show you're in, because audience A is going to need to receive it differently than audience B. So you just need to be ready for that. And you can listen to a couple minutes of a show or things like that just to get an idea from it. And also look at the type of people they've interviewed, because that's really going to help you to position that better. So then once you have that, but your key message or your 1 to 3 things you're going to teach is always pretty much going to stay the same. Just how you introduce it is going to be different for each show. And then like you're going to find that the message and the call to action really don't change all that much. So I guess my question for you would be then, what are those 1 to 3 key things?
Well, the big thing is people always think that they have plenty of time. And, I always bring up the story of Las Vegas. There were 58 people that went to a concert thinking they had a lot of, time to do it.
Jodine, you're muted, I think.
Affected by that. Did I cut out there?
Yeah, you said Las Vegas, and then I lost you because I think you got muted somehow.
Okay. I always bring up the story of Las Vegas because there were 58 people that, felt they had a lot of time when they went to that concert. But we all saw, it play out where, their time was cut short, unfortunately. And it's tragic. But, we all feel we're invincible. But the reality is we have responsibilities. And, those families, if, you don't have your things in place, one, just the stress of losing somebody is enough, but then there's over 101 decisions that have to be made when somebody passes away. And if you've taken the responsibility and, the love and concern of leaving your legacy, if you've taken care of those, your loved ones are going to be able to mourn and celebrate your life versus worry about, the next stress of what all we have to do to get, through this event. So time is always a big one. A lot of people feel like they're going to leave the responsibility to their families, but does your family really know what you want? And have you really had those heart-to-heart conversations? And there again, you're leaving a lot of undue stress to somebody. And, if you don't care and they, even if you don't care, you're still leaving that responsibility to them.
Well, this is so this is what I would do here, just as an advice point is that's awesome. And like in my head, I'm already thinking about, oh my gosh, all these things I have to know. So I would grab 1 to 3 very particular things. Like, did you know you have to think of this? Did you know you have to think of this? Just to give people something to think about, because it's going to work really well for our next step, which is our call to action. So this is awesome so far, but give me 1 to 3 like things I'm actually going to have to take action on by hearing you.
So are you talking about the 101 things?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so,
you can leave the other 97 out, but give me 1 to 3 of those.
Okay. So just in particular, with that, just, do you want to be cremated or, do you want to, be buried? I mean, some people, like when my mom passed away, she didn't want to be in a box, but the thought of burning wasn't something she wanted either. So we always had conversations. It's like, Mom, we can't throw you out on the rock pile. You've got to make a decision here.
My mom always used to say, I like it hot, but not that hot. So anyway.
So, that's something that, and as somebody that's left on earth, you want to respect their wishes. And if you don't know what they want, but she was very claustrophobic. So it was like, well, Mom, at this point, you're going to have to deal with the claustrophobic because you don't want to burn, But, and I don't mean to make lighthearted of it, but we don't have enough conversations about these types of things. The other thing too is, just gathering all the information of, like, my dad had colon cancer 40 years ago, or 30 years ago. So we just assumed Dad was going to die of cancer. That was just, Mom had accepted that. In the end, he actually had Alzheimer's and dementia, which was extremely hard for my mom because she, wasn't prepared for that.
Right.
And so she had to start making decisions, without him. And that was very, very difficult for her. But, we always assumed that Dad was going to pass away before Mom. That was just what Mom was very strong, very, energetic. She ended up breaking her hip and, her health deteriorated, and just the stress. The reality is the stress that she endured with my siblings, cost her a lot of her golden years. So with that, we didn't have a lot of information written down about my dad. I knew that he went off to the Army, but we didn't know when that was, because he was the only son. they didn't keep them in the Army. They shipped them back home.
Right.
You know, so it was just those details weren't written down. And that was kind of disheartening because you want to honor them in their obituary. And so that's part of the course that we talk about is, you know, going through and, you know, you can, if you don't want to write your own obituary, you can put all the information down. So that person that has to do that task, it's right there and they know it's correct.
Cool. Okay. So that's awesome. So now let's take a look at that. We'll bring us back to call to action now. So is there any sort of a lead magnet you're giving out now? And if there is, what is that?
I'm doing a conference or an hour consultation where just to, you know, let them express their thoughts or what they need to do. And hopefully, you know, a lot of it is not so much, you know, them needing guidance. It's just for them a place to safely express, you know, their thoughts and their feelings.
Okay. So that makes sense then, because that gives me context for the next part, because I had two ideas on what we could do here. But that actually puts me right on the one that I'm thinking of. So the thing you don't want to do is, if the goal is a phone call, you don't want to do the phone call right away, because people are going to hear that and they're going to say, oh, phone call, they're going to sell me something. I don't want to do that. Like, the phone call we know is a help thing where even if they don't buy something from us, they're going to feel value from it, but that's not the psychology of buying. So what you want to do is, you just gave like these three, you know, key things that I need to know. And you showed me your personal story. So I'm like, oh my gosh, you know this better than anybody. So in this case, I would say I'm going to give you a worksheet. If you go to www.whateverit.com, that's going to be your opt-in. A worksheet that's going to help you work out these, you know, three key components that I found out of the 101 you need to know. But I've worked it down to just these three key ones you need to know. And then what you're actually going to do is align that with the daily email sequence. And each day you're going to take, and maybe I found video does really well. So I would dedicate each one of those. We're going to do it as 5 days. Day one is going to be your hero's journey, where once they opt in immediately and get their checklist emailed to them, or their worksheet emailed to them, you know, the next day they're going to get a written out, this is my story, because you're then explaining to them why you have, you know, they've heard you say it already, but why you have the credibility to teach them what you're going to teach them over the next, you know, at following us up 4 days. So then each of the next 3 days, I would, in that email, say, here's a video that's going to help you understand the context a little bit more of why you need to understand this point. And at the bottom of that email, you're going to say, would you really like some help with this? Book a call here, and set up a calendar link, and they can actually book a call with you, because at any time in this process, somebody could be already ready to book with you. So you're going to explain each one of those 3 videos over the next 3 days. Then on day 5, or the final day of this sequence, you're going to have them, hey, I hope you've learned a lot. I hope this has helped you implement. I really want to help you. And this is going to be an email crafted towards how you can help, with the goal of booking a call. And I guess you're probably going to try and sell them into your course on the call, correct?
Right. I guess here's one thing, two parts.
Yep.
I have a list together. It's 101 decisions that have to be made after a loved one passes. That's another thing that I can give out as well.
I wouldn't do that, and the reason is 101 is way too freaking many. Like like somebody can't think with 101 things, and what you're going to do is scare them away from opting into your list. That's why I would focus on 3, or even 3 or 4. Like I tell people 3 to 5 is a great place to focus in. But I say in this case, with your topic, I'd focus on the 3 key things out of those. You know, there's 101, but I know the 3 major ones, and I'm gonna help you with them today. And that's what they're gonna opt into your list for. And you're gonna see your opt-ins are gonna go up, because you're just focusing on 3 core elements. Okay. And then, like I said, every day you're gonna offer them value with a chance to get on a call, because they may say, "Oh, I'm ready now. This was the one that hit me." And then, like I said, that final one, if you just kind of sum it up to, this is how I want to help you. This is why I want to help you. And then book your call here. Now you're probably still only going to see 25% of people that are opting in book a call, but that's still a huge improvement over cold traffic. So that if you align those 3 things up, you know, the personal story with the 3 key messages with the opt-in to the list, you're going to see a huge improvement in what you're doing.
And then the other thing that I've always struggled with is, you know, death is not a romantic subject to talk about, and trying to bring, you know, the romance to it. You know, bringing the little stories of my mom and laughing. Do you feel that's a good way of like bringing humor or lightheartedness, or, you know, not making it so, you know, stern? I mean, you know what I mean?
We previously had a client, actually in a similar space, that wrote a book called "Press This If I Die," and basically he wanted to become, quote unquote, the Howard Stern of death. So he made it interesting and you know, really captivating for people. So you want to take your own spin on it. Like, how can people feel that with you? So that's kind of something you're going to have to explore a little bit. But any one of these things, when you're coming from a place of help and how I can help people, is going to be interesting. So I think if you can really show from your personal story how you can help people, like I would think of something like, if you don't know these key, you know, 3 key things, you know, your family is really going to suffer in the future. So you want to figure out what that's going to look like. But I think if you align those 3 key elements and then kind of drill down a little bit more on like what the hook's going to be, I think you're in great shape here.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure that it was perceived well. You know, my mom was a very interesting character, so.
There's different ways you can do it. Like I said, we had the client that had a book, you know, "Press This If I Die," because that's interesting. But if you wanted to figure out how you can position that with the interesting stories of your mom, go for it. Because that may be something that you can work in. You don't want to focus too much time on that, because that's going to take away from, you know, story, message, and call to action. But it can be something that gets people interested and makes it a little bit more of an interesting story for them.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Awesome. So was this helpful today?
Definitely. I'm excited to, obviously I'm driving, so I can't, I haven't been able to take notes, but I got mental notes, but I'm excited to be able to hit the replay and start applying all of it. But I really appreciate your time. Like I said, my struggle has been, one, it's a very blue ocean. So I need to hone in and, you know, find the correct avatar. You know, I because we all can use it.
Yeah,
but,
and I would take a look at that a little bit more and hone it down, because if you do focus on one of those audiences, like I asked you in the beginning, is this for the kids or for the parents? I really would figure that out, because it's going to make this convert a little bit better. And then once you have those 3 things in alignment with the perfect audience, you're going to be in great shape here.
Well, I've had a beta group go through, so, and you know, the course is ready to go. So now it's just, you know, launching it. But what I've found is a lot of people, Josh Forte is a perfect example. I jumped on, he had just a barter system one night. And so, you know, I told him my course, and he said, well, I don't need that. He goes, but I want one for my parents. So that's what I'm seeing a lot of, is, you know, people, they know they need it, but they know that their parents need it more. So, you know, I mean, that's why it's a little bit of a struggle too, because it's...
Well, that's interesting though, because that client I mentioned to you that we had previously, that's what he did. It was the kids wanted it for the parents. So I think if you hone in on that a little bit more, it may really, really help you in that way, because your audience may be millennials thinking about their parents. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, and I think just getting the subject out there and talking about it, even if the millennials don't pick up on it and they can get their parents into it, at least they've been exposed to it. And that's a start. And I feel if they can learn from my experience and, you know, make it better for themselves, at least I've, you know, done what I want to accomplish.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I'm going to be posting this in the group, so I would ask you to keep in touch with us so we can see how this process is working for you, and I can also jump back in and give you some advice here and there. But I appreciate you doing this recorded coaching call with us today, Jodine.